Okay, so today I want to discuss what happened to the Jeremy Kyle show. Do you remember the Jeremy Kyle show?
Yeah, I think probably everyone in the UK definitely remembers it. It was always a daytime TV sort of thing that you would stick on.
Yeah, so between July 2005 and May 2019, ITV aired the Jeremy Kyle show every weekday morning from 9:25 to 10 a.m. I remember it because it would always be, if you were off school, it started pretty much just as school would have been starting.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, if you were sick and if your mummy was sitting downstairs and you wouldn't be allowed to watch cartoons, you would have to sit and watch that.
That's actually true, yeah. But after 14 years, while still putting in big ratings, the show was abruptly cancelled. It wasn't only cancelled, it was seemingly wiped from the archives and erased from history altogether. But why? Not only was the show deleted as well, they also deleted their YouTube page, which had dozens of videos that had millions of views each. So clearly something happened where this big money-drawn show, it had big sponsors, like, I always remember it had Foxy Bingo and, of course, fucking the Sun Bingo.
Oh.
So you know exactly, like, what sort of person they're targeting it towards, don't you?
Yeah.
And that is so, like, classist to say, but it's undoubtedly true.
Yeah, and it's the same kind of things as, like, those magazines that you would see in the shop and all, like, about the soaps and about, like, all the celebrity drama and all that there.
I always think that sort of thing. See, like, ITV, The Sun, Sky Sports News, I think they all have the same vibe.
Does Sky Sports News have it?
I think it has a really, like...
So I've never watched it, so...
You know, like, exciting breaking news. Like, Ipswich midfielder signs new 3-year deal. They're always making everything seem like it's dramatic breaking news, but it's always just a load of shit. And they're the sort of people that would, like, camp outside a footballer's house. John Terry involved in racism row with another player, and so they'll report from outside his house. You know, like, stuff like that.
Real tabloid.
Real tabloid. I think, like, The Sun, ITV, and Sky Sports News, there are three things in particular I think have that exact same vibe. Right, so why was the Jeremy Kyle show cancelled? Well, one of the main reasons, and the thing that everybody thinks is sort of the sole reason, isn't quite the only reason why. On the 2nd of May 2019, 63-year-old Steve Dymond was in Granada Studios alongside his on-again, off-again fiancée, Jane Callahan. They were filming another episode of the Jeremy Kyle show. Like many episodes, this one consisted of one participant, Steve in this instance, being brought out and screamed at by Jeremy Kyle over accusations of supposed wrongdoings. The segment concluded with the results of a lie detector test taken by Dymond earlier in the day, being revealed to Dymond, Callahan and the studio audience. Usually most episodes would be along that. He would bring the guests out, scream at the bad one, pretend to be sympathetic to the nice one, and then reveal lie detector tests.
Yeah.
It always seemed to follow that same sort of pattern. Kyle would almost always antagonise, belittle and berate his guests throughout the routine, screeching that they were dirty little liars, scum, telling them to get a job, stick something on the end of it, and that it was his tax money that funded their lives. Well, do you remember?
I do. I remember him saying those exact things.
Do you know, I remember I even had a mate who used to be like, oh, I love the Jeremy Kyle show and I love the way he screams at, like, all the scumbags. And at the time I remember being like, yeah, but deep down going like, nah, I actually hate him. I hate the way he gets on.
I know. He is so cringe and he's such a hypocrite as well.
Well, we're going to get into how much of a fucking hypocrite he is as well. After filming concluded, Kyle always claimed a team of aftercare experts would deal with the guests regarding the results of the show's effects on their relationships and their lives. And I actually remember him referring to them as, like, geniuses. And I think at one point he even called them something like the best aftercare team in the world. Well, we're going to analyse how that's a fucking lie. So, Steve Dymond literally said the words, "I wish I was dead," to the aftercare team in the aftermath of his episode.
Okay.
2 hours later, they sent him home in a taxi and they don't appear to have ever contacted him again.
Oh my god. That's unbelievable.
I do a disclaimer going forward. I don't actually know how much of a good or bad or whatever person Steve Dymond was.
Yeah.
So I want to clear that up. He might have done something horrible.
Yeah.
But regardless of that, regardless of what you've done, I think the treatment on the show is something really bizarre.
So, whenever he went to the aftercare team, how long did that last?
2 hours. So after the show, the filming is over.
Yeah.
He had a conversation with the aftercare team where he said he was feeling really down. He literally said the words, "I want to die." And they are within 2 hours of the show ending. I don't know how long he actually spoke to them, but within 2 hours of it ending, they'd already sent him in a taxi home. One of the conditions for taking the show's polygraph test was coming off your medication in the days before filming. In Dymond's case, this meant no longer taking his prescribed antidepressants. This was said to have made Dymond exceptionally vulnerable by a family friend.
Yeah, definitely. If you come off any sort of antidepressant, you have to do it bit by bit. You can just come off it straight away, or it literally says,
I know,
like, it would make you suicidal.
Imagine a prerequisite for going on a fucking talk show that in theory is supposed to help your relationship. That's the way they would present it.
Yeah, that's definitely
involves coming off medically prescribed antidepressants.
That's just insane to me.
So here's a word on this Jeremy Kyle aftercare team, right? There's no evidence to show that any of them working on the show at the time were qualified mental health staff. They seem just to have been show producers and researchers, which is a major conflict of interest. So do you know what I mean? If you're supposed to be helping...
they literally didn't have like any sort of degrees for counselling or anything?
Well, I'll look this up. In the aftermath of an earlier controversy years before, ITV said that there was 2 registered mental health workers on every show. I think they were experts in addiction and eating disorders, but that doesn't apply to this sort of case.
Yeah, that's not really like a broad thing of mental health.
If this is a case about a man on antidepressants, I don't know exactly what his episode was about, but I think he was accused of cheating on his wife and did a lie detector, or his on-again, off-again fiancée, and did a lie detector. But if your team of experts consists of fucking a bunch of producers trying to make the show entertaining, an eating disorder expert and a dad expert, or whatever the fuck the other one was, it doesn't seem very appropriate.
No, definitely not appropriate.
So on the 9th of May 2019, exactly 7 days after the filming of his episode, which has never been aired and never will be aired, Dymond was found dead alone in his rented room in Portsmouth from suspected suicide.
That's really sad.
I think it's horribly sad.
Yeah.
But you'll be glad to know, in contrast to his guest, Kyle at the time earned £2 million a year for his role hosting the show while living with his second wife, Carla Germain, in a £3 million mansion in Berkshire, though you might have also found him in his £2 million mansion in the Barbados at the time.
That is just... shocking.
So it's nice to know that somebody that would scream at people who were relying on benefits to live, this man who was screaming at them.
That was his target people, like what he thought was the bottom of the barrel. That's the kind of people he would try to get on his show.
And he wanted the bottom of the barrel to literally be his punching bag.
Yeah.
For people to live vicariously through him, you know, people who hate benefit scroungers, and they hate those tramps next door who they're worse than us. That's who he's targeting. He's targeting that one that wants to see somebody get stuck into people who need help.
Punching down.
Yeah,
definitely.
I think Jeremy Kyle show might be the ultimate punching down that's ever existed.
Yeah. Complete trash.
Yeah. Unlike the underprivileged upbringing, however, of his guests, Kyle was born into an incredibly wealthy family, did you know?
I had no idea.
His father was a personal secretary to the British Queen.
No way.
He was bringing home a 6-figure salary of around £146,000 per year, and he sent Jeremy off to a private school where he was educated at the tune of £6,000 a term at Reading Bluecoat School.
So he had a very good education. This is what he chose to do with it.
Born into extreme privilege and a lot of money, he still chose to put on... Do you ever notice his accent? He tries to put on sort of like a Danny Dyer-esque type, and he's having to go with these scroungers who are taking our money.
Especially whenever he's having to go, that's whenever you notice it more.
Yeah. Despite his constant berating of his guests over their employment situation, Jeremy didn't have a settled job for years and entered the media industry in his 30s, working at various radio stations before he was ever given a permanent job, and before he was given the Jeremy Kyle Show at first by Channel 5 at age 40. So for somebody who spent so many years criticising everybody about get a job, get off your arse and get a job, he didn't have a settled job until he was in his late 30s. But sure, he had his man dad's money. He had the private secretary of the Queen's money behind him.
That's absolutely insane. I had no idea that.
So he's an unbelievable hypocrite.
Yeah, definitely. I thought there was a lot more to his hypocrisy, but I didn't think it was this.
See, from watching it, I genuinely would have thought that he kind of was a working class person growing up. That's the vibe he tried to create.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought otherwise. I definitely knew he was a bit more posh and had money now because he had that show, but I didn't think he came from a very wealthy background.
Did you notice as well, he would always, in an attempt to endear himself to the audience and make himself more relatable, he would frequently bring up his previous gambling addiction that, of course, he talked about how he overcame it. That was during his first marriage. So he was clearly comfortable discussing I've had problems, I had a gambling problem. Again, I think that was almost done to... I'm not saying... I know that was true. That actually is true, but I think he was so comfortable mentioning that because he knows that sort of presents him as a bit of a lad. He was down, he was always gambling. I think that's something...
But people don't realise the wealth behind his gambling as well.
And that's what I'm about to go into here, right? He didn't mention the fact, however, that it was usually other people's money he was gambling, including stealing a lot of money from his first wife and gambling it away. Nor did he mention the times that he was lying there about having a life-threatening illness whenever she confronted him about his gambling, or about verbally abusing her, or the time he took a pair of scissors and cut up all of her clothes, or the time he cheated on her.
Oh. I am literally in shock right now at all of this.
But here, he's just an ordinary geezer. He had a gambling problem, but he overcame it. So I can relate to him. I'm down the pub, down the bookies. I love Jeremy. He screams at that tramp next door who's on benefits. He's like me.
One of the main things that he always brought people on and slabbered to them about was about them cheating and all that there. And he had the cheek to do that.
His first wife says he cheated on her frequently. Now, I will say, I don't know if I have to say this or what, but there's no proof of this. She just said this in an interview.
Just allegations, yeah.
But you know what? He couldn't give off more of a hypocrite vibe, could he?
No, definitely not.
A smug to the point you actually want to hit him.
Yeah.
The reason I'm mentioning all this is just to show Jeremy Kyle's hypocrisy. This isn't just a podcast we're going to have a go saying he's a scumbag. I'm not mentioning that as sort of let's now take swings at Jeremy Kyle.
Yeah.
It's because he spent 15 years, or how long was it? 14 years every morning having to go at other people. Well, all that was in his closet.
Also, should we do some sort of disclaimer?
Nah, fuck him.
No.
Here's an example of the effects going on the Jeremy Kyle Show had on ordinary people's lives. In September 2007, when sentencing someone for headbutting another man during a filming of The Jeremy Kyle Show, Manchester District Judge Alan Berg said the purpose of the show is to affect a morbid and depressing display of dysfunctional people whose lives are in turmoil. He described the show as human bear-baiting and actually showed leniency in sentencing, as he added, "It's no surprise that these people, some of whom have limited intellects, become aggressive with each other. This type of incident is exactly what the producers want. These self-righteous individuals should be in the dock with you." That was only 2 years into the show's history. Already judges were openly criticising it.
Yeah, that's definitely very true. The 100% wanted all the controversy, all the fighting and everything on the show just for the ratings.
I think Judge Alan Burr got it fucking spot on.
Yeah, that is spot on.
And people say as well, so these type of shows originated in America. Jerry Springer, Maury Povich, etc. Right? Mm-hmm. I'm going to say, here's why Jeremy Kyle Show, in my opinion, is actually worse than all of those, especially Jerry Springer. I remember in the mid to late 90s, there was a controversy where a Jerry Springer guest actually did, I think, either stabbed or assaulted another guest. And in the aftermath of that, and if you ever noticed this when you watch the Jerry Springer Show, apart from the really early ones, it's always presented lighthearted. It's never like Jerry Springer doesn't get the guests on and start screaming at them about being scum, about being like bottom of the barrel. Yeah. It's always presented as funny, and the guests, even though like they shove each other and preach each other and be like, "You're sleeping with my man," it's always done in a lot more lighthearted way.
That's the same as Dr. Phil as well, wouldn't it be?
Yeah, Dr. Phil is a scumbag as well.
He is like just our opinions, but he is a scumbag. Like
I would say that's very good actually in terms of. Dr. Phil would be the closest equivalent, in my opinion, to Jeremy Kyle sort of US.
Yeah, because he really tries to say the questions in a way and stuff to get...
It's done to try to get the maximum amount of provocation out of the guests.
Yeah.
At no point is the Jeremy Kyle Show trying to help these guests. It's always about trying to make their emotions as heightened as possible, to make them as angry as possible, and to make them look as stupid as possible.
Yeah, they definitely want people to be laughing at them.
It really...
And that is the same as Dr. Phil, definitely.
Yeah. I think it's really sad, though, that a lot of people genuinely believed this guy will help me.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people would go on the show because they offered a free lie detector test, but I'm going to be talking about the validity of the lie detector test and how it was a staple of the show for 15 years, but how reliable actually even were the results.
Yeah.
But I was saying there, say to be fair, the Jerry Springer Show, I remember, if you ever watched that, see of all those talk shows where they would get guests on essentially to make fun of them, I think they're the least offensive, because I remember the Jerry Springer Show would, in the opening credits, they literally advertised the fact, like they would put it on screen, it would be like voted the worst television show of all time, and Jerry was always like cracking jokes during it and all.
Yeah, like trying to definitely bring the mood up.
One of really tasteless American show back in the day, did you ever watch the Maury Show? And it would be 8 people and you would have to guess, like, were they born as a man or a woman?
No, I've never heard of this. I've heard of the show, I've never heard of this.
Do you know what's great to say? My man, see, when I was about 6 or 7, my man and I used to love those. I remember about 3 or 4 times sitting and watching them. The person would be, it was a woman, and then they were like, I was born as a man, and my dad would be like, oh, fuck.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh, you couldn't have any shows like that these days?
Not a chance, like, could you? I think the Jeremy Kyle Show was an attempt to be an escape from reality for the viewers, even though they know these are real people and their emotions and their anger and their fucking tragic stories are real. There's a detached element whenever you were watching Jeremy Kyle. It was as if they weren't a real person because it's a TV show and there's a studio and there's a host with a microphone. So even though these people's pain was completely real, it was presented in such a way where it's like, that's just trash TV.
Yeah, and people watching it as well would look at them and think, well, at least my life isn't as bad as theirs. That
was pretty much the goal of the show, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Here's another example for you. In 2009, an episode featuring a 23-year-old woman accused of cheating on her boyfriend was dealt with so well by the amazing aftercare team that the man punched his girlfriend in the face and shattered her eye socket and cheekbone after filming. Again, when in court, the judge showed leniency during sentencing, stating there is plainly an element of cruelty and exploitation that takes place on Jeremy Kyle's show. So anybody who ended up in court for something that they did in the aftermath of the Jeremy Kyle Show, judges tend to show leniency towards them. And I know you could say, if somebody's prepared to punch his girlfriend in the eyes and shatter her fucking eye socket.
Yeah.
He's a scumbag. And ultimately you can say that's true. But these shows do prey on vulnerable and, not to be a dick, but low intelligence people.
Yeah.
And heighten their emotions to the point where it's not surprising that they're so furious afterwards that their behaviour becomes worse. I don't think that excuses their behaviour, but I think it contributes to it.
It definitely contributes to it.
Let's take a wee look into the aftercare team and see when you start looking into them, it quickly becomes apparent that the term aftercare is completely inappropriate for them. The most prominent member was an on-air expert, a specky, baldy creep called Graham Stainer. Do you remember him?
Yeah, I definitely
Jeremy's
remember
like
Graham.
the amazing genius Graham, he referred to him as. He looked like, I don't care if we get done for it, he looked like a fucking...
Jesus Christ. I don't care if we get done with what you're saying.
In the wake of Steve Dymond's death, a committee was hired to examine the duty of care provided to the guests in the wake of their Jeremy Kyle Show appearances, and they singled genius, to quote Jeremy, Graham out for particular criticism. So the man Jeremy lauded as the head of his aftercare team was singled out for particular criticism. The committee found that Graham didn't bother to look into the background of guests and didn't even bother to learn their names, let alone the names of their children who were often affected by what happened on the show.
That is horrible. That's
no,
absolutely horrendous.
Another wanker who I always got nothing but terrible vibes from.
Yeah.
A guy who stuck on
pretentious,
stuck on a pair of glasses and a soothing voice and had Jeremy repeatedly call him a genius so people would be like, this guy knows what he's talking about. Graham was complicit with Kyle in prioritising the performative aspect of the show over duty of care. He was known to have refused to participate in cases when he was unhappy with Kyle's layout of the case, and he would fail to intervene backstage when guests would have traumatic episodes, breakdowns and fits of anger, failing to de-escalate these situations as the head of aftercare's duty should be, as these scenes were deemed to make for better viewing. Somebody who's supposed to be helping these people's situations, if they were having a fit of fury backstage, he would deliberately not intervene so that they could pick up. Do you remember they would show you somebody backstage like punching the wall or screaming?
Yeah.
That would be, in reality, when somebody's a member of a mental health aftercare team should be stepping in the most, and he never would.
I know. Whenever I was younger, I would never have thought about that. I would just be watching it and being like, oh, the drama, I love this. But now, looking back, that is absolutely horrible. And what else was that mental health team,
Yeah.
air quotes, therefore, if they weren't going to de-escalate things?
Joe was another nonsense, by the way. The Jeremy Kyle Show backstage was part of the set. Remember, it would show you the person backstage, so they would have Jeremy would be interviewing, say, some woman on the stage, and he'd be pretending to be sympathetic. He'd be like, oh, he sounds like a scumbag, he sounds like a cheater, he sounds like a dirty little liar. And they would show you the person backstage, like, screaming and looking furious. But that backstage thing was part of the show, like, making them stand in that area with a camera pointed on them where they're not allowed to move and they have to listen to somebody criticising everything about them. That was done to heighten their anger and emotions with a camera pointed on them. So that's not what backstage is. Backstage is what you didn't see.
Yeah.
Graham would also coax female guests into accepting responsibility for being in abusive relationships, telling one particular female guest that she created a lot of stress and created a lot of problems for her boyfriend.
I just don't even have the words. Is there nothing that they could be prosecuted for? Obviously there's not, because like they're just like saying these things, but...
Well, Graham's day will come to some extent here coming up.
Okay.
I will say he does actually have qualification. Oh, I should have written it down. He does have a qualification in some sort of thing. That's right. He does have some qualifications, right? But he so clearly, just repeat myself, but he so clearly prioritised the show over any sort of care for the guests.
All about the money.
He doesn't respond to criticism well either, did you know, Earl Graham? He once walked out of a Sky News interview when asked what the Jeremy Kyle Show's presentation of broken families contributed to teenagers' perceptions of family values. So he's on the show, the host asks him a question, and he says, we're in it there, and walks off. So he's supposed to be able to look after guests whose tempers are escalating, yet when he's asked a question he doesn't like...
A simple question as well.
The hypocrisy of him. Yeah, remember when guests on the Jeremy Kyle Show would storm off and Jeremy would be like, you're not getting away with that, and he would chase after them, and the cameras would follow them?
Oh my God, yes.
This baldy wanker, I was going to say pedo, this baldy wanker stormed off the second the tables were turned. Here's my theory for you on what Graham's role truly was. He said he was head of the aftercare team. I think in a way that may be true, because I believe his role was not so much head of the aftercare for the guests, but for the show itself. Blindside, humiliate, berate and break people down in front of millions, then have Graham with a soothing voice and specky glasses convince them that the show cares for them and take attention away from the fact that the ordeal the show had put them through is what has heightened their emotions and anger that much. I think he was aftercare for protecting the show rather than protecting the guests.
Yeah, that would make sense, but is there any sort of evidence for it? Do you know?
No, that's just my theory.
Yes, that's your theory.
So they're just twisting the term aftercare.
I wouldn't be shocked though.
In 2014, David Fox, who was another guest on the Jeremy Kyle show, tried to commit suicide after an appearance on the show. When he rang the number Graham gave him if he needed help, he received nothing.
Surely, after all these years of the show being on air or whatever, and so many people, the fact that they even needed an aftercare team for people who were possibly going to commit suicide or having suicidal thoughts because of an appearance on that show, just shows what that show was like. And how did they, well, obviously they did realise what the show was like, but how did other people not notice sooner?
It amazes me this went on so long. Now, as we get to the end, there actually is a fairly satisfying conclusion. But it does shock me as well that for 14 years, and not to be sanctimonious like Jeremy Kyle, right? But how did fuck Jeremy Kyle himself. He just seems like a cold-hearted scumbag.
Yeah.
See somebody like Graham, who actually does have qualifications in mental health, and see like even just the producers who work backstage, how did none of them think we're fucking horrendous? Like what we're doing is, and as recently or as early as 2007, 2 years into the show, I mean judges and MPs were openly referred to it as human bear baiting.
Yeah. How did they? What was their perception of the show? The people who worked on it, like the producers and stuff.
I think they must have
even the camera people, even the people in the audience. Like I would love to know other people's perceptions.
I think they must have just detached themselves from the situation. I think going back to that thing I was saying earlier, that probably convinced them.
We would have been on Jeremy.
Yes, screaming. I think they've convinced themselves it's just a show, it's just lighthearted entertainment, but all too frequently the guests would be fucking driven to suicide. Eventually, in one case, it actually happened.
Mm-hmm.
Professor Simon Wesley, the president of the Royal College of Psychiatrists, was a proponent in 2019 of the show being, in his words, axed forever. So when you have the head of the Royal College of Psychiatrists saying the show should be permanently axed, how can somebody like Graham, in any sort of conscience, continue working on the show?
Money?
Probably has a lot to do with it, actually, yeah.
That's the only thing I can
I also think
of.
he enjoyed the celebrity. He sort of portrayed himself as, I'm not really part of the show. I'm here to help the guests. I'm the professional.
Yeah.
He's as much part of the show as Jeremy Kyle.
Oh,
He's pretty much a co-host.
Yeah.
He just didn't speak to the camera. So you were talking there about how the producers were able to deal with what went on. Well, an ex-producer admitted to being shocked when joining the show and seeing how producers egged on guests before filming. A guest who had learning difficulties was there to confront his girlfriend over cheating allegations. Before the episode started, he was brought into a private room by a producer and told, you need to be a man, you need to go out there and confront people. So that's what they were telling somebody with learning difficulties to do.
So it's all about confrontation.
And there's such an aggravating quote coming up from Jeremy about Jeremy Kyle. Like, I want to say it, you'll know it's so untrue. The show couldn't have been less about helping people, and it was 100% about creating confrontation. Mm-hmm. After another episode looking at a mother and daughter having issues, the mother was in hysterical tears backstage after filming, saying the show had made things worse when they'd promised to make it better, and demanded an apology from Kyle for his behaviour. She never received the apology, and the aftercare team's job was to send her home as soon as possible, not help the situation. So when it was
literally heartbreaking. That's horrible.
When it was over,
picturing someone sitting crying like that.
The producers were literally told, get her out as quickly as possible. She's screaming. She wants to speak to Jeremy Kyle again. He never spoke to her again, and their whole thing was to get her out as quickly as possible.
He is such a scumbag. Like,
he fucking.
How did he go to bed at night and go to sleep and all?
Fuck me.
Go to bed and go to sleep. That's not the saying.
Where another guest who had a taxi at his door to take him and his girlfriend to the studio an hour after a producer responded to his call was labelled the most hated man in Britain during his appearance. He attempted to commit suicide afterwards and has described the aftercare team as 2 phone calls in his case. It's kind of them to give him 2 after labelling him the most hated man in Britain.
Why was he labelled that? Do you know the details?
He's accused of being abusive to his girlfriend. Again, I'm not saying any of these people are nice at all.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? They bring somebody on, literally have them at a studio an hour after calling them back. So he saw that they were offering a free lie detector test.
Yeah.
Called up. I think it was literally the next day or 2 days later they called him back. And within an hour, they had a taxi picking him and his girlfriend up to bring him in. And unknowingly, because obviously it was only an on-screen graphic, he didn't know they were calling this the most hated man in Britain. Nice of them to give him 2 phone calls after that.
So he didn't really have any preparation either?
No,
obviously
nothing.
None of them did.
The main reason most people went on it was to get the free lie detector test, which they believed and Jeremy Kyle perpetrated was accurate, but we'll see that it wasn't. So these stories paint a grim picture of the show, but ITV defended it for years. So why eventually was it cancelled and seemingly deleted forever? I mean, for 14 years they did nothing but defend it. Well, you do have to say one reason could be, as much as anything else, that I have to admit these talk shows seem pretty outdated now.
Yeah.
Like in general,
definitely.
There's just not. There used to be so many of them.
There was such a big craze of them.
But After Dymond's death, ITV's managing director Julian Bellamy, Jeremy Kyle Show's executive producer Tom McLennan, and our old mate Graham appeared before the Department for Digital, Culture, Media and Sport, who are the department of the UK government given the responsibility of building the digital economy. The three claimed to be unaware of the wide range of accuracy of the show's polygraph machine, which is believed to be anywhere between 45 and 65% accurate.
I don't even know if I believe it's that high still.
Well, obviously in American courts don't polygraph tests and they're not even allowed to be given as evidence anymore. Do you know, once Jeremy Kyle responded on the show to accusations that the thing wasn't reliable by saying, I'm going to prove that it is. Okay, and he got somebody to ask him, Jeremy, are you now or have you ever been a llama? And the crowd burst out laughing and he said no, and it came up as true and everybody clapped.
That's comedy.
That's comedy gold, isn't it? The chair of the House of Commons, a man called Damien Collins, said the Jeremy Kyle Show's producers' lack of expert knowledge was astonishing. Jeremy Kyle rejected the request to appear in front of the committee alongside ITV's managing director, Jeremy Kyle Show's producer, and Earl Graham, who didn't even bother to turn up for this. Executive producer McLennan defended Jeremy Kyle even in 2019, before they made the decision to finally bin the show. He was still defending him. He said that viewers loved Jeremy and always wanted to hear his thoughts, and that Jeremy was always striving for resolution. How can he...
That is one of the biggest lies I've ever heard.
How can he stand there and say that? After 14 years of clearly doing everything he could to avoid resolution, because that would mean the end of the episode. Even then, even after all this, right before the show was finally fucking cancelled, he still defended him, claiming that he's trying to look out for people. So the aftermath of this trial wasn't a legal trial in that sense. It was just being brought in front of a committee and made to answer in things after Steve Dymond's death. The aftermath of the trial was an agreement that ITV would never again create a lie detector based show. So you'll never again on British terrestrial TV see a show where somebody gets in, takes a lie detector and the results get read to them. They're now agreed to be banned. They're not banned in the sense of they're not allowed, but everybody has pretty much agreed to stop doing them.
Yeah. What about the US? Do you know anything about that?
Not in the US, but in the UK. Over the course of the show, Ofcom, who are the government-approved regulating authority for broadcasting, and if you have a complaint about a TV show, over the course of the 14 years of Jeremy Kyle, over 20,000 complaints were made, but it took 14,000 years before the show...
14,000
14,000 years! Fucking feels like that. Before the show was finally cancelled. Ofcom have now introduced new regulations which have made it difficult for another show like Jeremy Kyle to ever exist. These include due care must be taken over the welfare, well-being and dignity of participants in the programme. Participants must not be caused unjustified distress or anxiety by taking part in programmes or by the broadcast of these programmes. Multiple people who went on Jeremy Kyle over the years said they felt so humiliated, so angry and so betrayed and lied to about the episode and tried to get it banned from being shown because there was roughly about a month between filming and the episode airing, and it never worked. No matter how much people asked, no matter how much people begged, they would always show the episode. Never agreed to refuse to show an episode.
I still can't believe that it went on for that long.
That long.
Like after so many complaints.
And so basically that is why it was cancelled alongside other reality TV show suicides. There has been a few reality TV show suicides in recent years, hasn't there?
I mean, there's been 3 people who were on Love Island.
Have since committed suicide, yeah. So basically it wasn't just as simple as Steve Dymond went on the show then he killed himself a week later. It was everything that I've mentioned here over the course of 14 years that added up to it finally being cancelled. Despite defending the show for so many years, I believe that by cancelling it and deleting its entire YouTube and online presence, I think that's ITV's way of, without using the words, finally apologising for the show ever existing.
It's not much of an apology, but I suppose it's better than nothing.
I agree.
Because if it was still up on YouTube, that's horrible for all those people who were exploited, clearly.
That's why it's been deleted from the YouTube, because ITV's YouTube page has to work along those regulations which Ofcom have introduced, so they basically just deleted it from history. You'll never find an official Jeremy Kyle upload ever again. It'll just be people doing it themselves. I have to admit, there was a point in my life where I actually would have been like, it's just a TV show, they agreed to go on it. There was a point in my life I
definitely would have been like that as well. 100%.
I think I might have even thought people that called it things like bear beating and like human cockfighting. I would have thought, you're being pretentious, you're exaggerating, you're thinking down at people. But not to overstate it, but I think it's a good thing for society that shows like this, that this show is cancelled and that there isn't just going to be another one replacing it. Yeah,
it's absolutely horrible for humanity in general.
One last side note, Jeremy Kyle still has a contract with ITV, still gets paid for them, and ever since it was cancelled, was over a year ago now, he's still trying to get a new show that isn't a talk show. Thankfully it hasn't happened yet, and I would actually fucking love if he never gets another show again.
What is it that he wants to do his new show on?
He just wants to host another show on ITV. As long as he gets paid, I'm sure he doesn't give a fuck what he's doing.
He's not going to be welcome on TV anymore, is he?
Do you remember as well, he briefly did a show, Jeremy Kay's Emergency Room, where he would interview people as they were in the emergency room? It only lasted a few months.
Don't remember this at all, but oh my God.
You're an exploitative cunt, and the world is a better place without you.
He couldn't. All these people on the TV, they're all people that he looks down upon, and then the other people that he tries to go and interview are people who are literally in an emergency room. That blows my mind. Like, who else could he possibly go? He could go out and interview homeless people and try to make a mockery of them.
I could see himself trying to create a sort of Piers Morgan persona type thing, where maybe he interviews somebody in jail, a convicted paedophile, and he screams at them and makes you think, oh, like he's saying what I would say.
Yeah.
Jeremy, you're just as bad as any fucking cunt in jail. Anybody on your show you ever spoke down to or criticised, you're actually worse than them. You're a fucking scumbag throughout this.
You have no morals at all.
Anyway, thanks for listening. Finding out why the Jeremy Kyle show was cancelled.